Welcome back to the week one gambling episode for Free Tendies Fantasy. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
What's up, buddy?
Um, let's just get right into our picks for the week. And before we do that, I'll just kind of do a quick little explanation of what we're doing here for those of you who are new to the show. This is our second season doing this. Each week, me and Yanni are going to pick five games that we like. Each game is going to be worth a theoretical $100. If you parlay games together, the ticket cost still remains $100, but you kind of get a boosted return on that if you do it. So yeah, we're just kind of simulating how we would do. We're just making picks that if we were in Vegas right now, I would feel comfortable throwing on games, and we're just going to track our performance and see how we do over the year. Quite frankly, there's a lot of wise guys on. There's a lot of wise guys in the gambling YouTube space, but I think we do better than them. I think we can do better than them. So we're gonna put the work together and kind of see that and track it and see how much money we're going to make over the year. So I'll start with my picks first. No parlays for me this week. I just wanted to kind of dip my toe in the water before getting all crazy. I'm going with the Ravens and Chiefs under 46 and a half. I'm going with the Eagles -3. I'm going with the Falcons -3. I'm going with the Panthers +4.5, and I'm going with the Raiders +3. Like I said, no parlay this week. The ticket cost is 500 for five single games, and it's a total potential return of $967.61. We don't have profit and loss yet because this is new new season starting from week one, starting fresh, and we don't have a season record yet, but we will get you those on next week to kind of show you how we performed.
Okay, so I did take a parlay on my first week back. Last year, I actually hit a couple of little two-leg parlays. I thought they were sort of interesting. I think they're kind of fun, and they are a way to either get ahead or to dig yourself out of a little bit of a hole. So I'm trying to get ahead of one early here. And that's going to be I'm parlaying the Falcons -3 and the Steelers Falcons under at 42 and a half. To me, that we'll get into why, but to me, those two bets should be attached to one another, and they're both pretty safe bets in my opinion. That's why I'm parlaying them. I'm taking the Texans at -2.5, the Vikings at -1.5, and the Cowboys at +2.5. And then for my returns, I'm looking at a parlay return of $371.01, other returns of $569.64 for a total ticket cost of $400, chasing a $940 payout. See how we do.
All right, sounds good. And let's get into the game breakdowns first. First one is me, Ravens, at the Chiefs on opening night. Coming up, it's on Thursday. I'm taking the under of 46 and a half. 38% of the money is on the under, and 83% of bets are on the under here. And when we say a bet, we mean an individual ticket that is being placed on your side. So when you see a huge difference, like you do here, between 83% of the tickets are coming in on one result, and only 38% of the money is coming in on one result, what that means is there's big, giant whales and pools of money that are coming in on the over. So basically, what those sharps are telling me is I'm a sucker for taking this. But I'm doing it anyways. I don't care. This is a matchup between the top two scoring defenses of 2023, believe it or not. I mean, with the Ravens and Chiefs, right, there are so many stars on the field, whether it's Lamar Jackson, whether it's Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, Rashi Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, you name it, all of the skill position guys are there. But that being said, these are still two of the two top defenses from last year. Over the past 5 years, primetime games have gone under 60% of the time. And before we actually started recording, I was looking for the stat for the opening week unders because overwhelmingly the opening week games do go under. I couldn't find a good stat for that. If somebody has a link to that that just proves me right, please put it in the comments or something. But yeah, a lot of, especially week one into primetime game, like these teams haven't played for like, I don't know, 6, 7 months. They're coming off the off season, and a lot of times the defenses do win early in the NFL. And then later on in the season, you start seeing the offenses have more success. So for all of those reasons, I think the under is the play here. And 46 and a half points too, that's a lot of points. That's not like a small number. Like I think that if you bump the total down to 40, 41 points, I would not be taking the under here, but I could easily see like a 17 to 24 game or something like that. I don't expect either of these teams to be bad. I don't expect either of these teams to look bad. I just think that there's talent on the defensive side of the ball as well, and we'll see it on Thursday. You have anything to add to this one, Yanni?
Nope. No, I think it's a reasonable bet.
I almost went with the Ravens +3. By the way, I didn't have the stones to bet against Mahomes right out of the gate though. The next one is me too. I'm taking the Eagles. It's technically at the Packers, but this is the Brazil game on Saturday. The Eagles are giving up 3 points here. The over under is 48 and a half. 27% of the bets against the spread are on Philly, and 61% of the money against the spread is on Philly. So, like I was saying in the last bet I made, when you see a huge difference between only 27% of the tickets coming in on one side, but 61% of the money is on that side, that means I'm swimming with the whales here. The whales are not calling me a sucker. They think I'm very smart for this bet. For me, this game really boils down to a couple of things. I think the reason that the tickets are coming in mass on the Packers side is just how these two teams looked at the end of last year. The Packers had a great 8 game stretch with Jordan Love. They snuck into the playoffs. They almost beat the Niners. All of the signs are pointing to this Packers team being a big deal this year and being a young, exciting squad. In the Eagles last year, they've just absolutely melted. They barely got into the playoffs. They went from the 1 seed to like the 4 seed. Then they had an embarrassing loss to Baker and the Bucks. There was talk about getting rid of Sirianni. It really does seem like, at least if you look at it from last year's perspective, like these teams were going two entirely separate directions. But to me, this is a reality check. New season, and I'm not taking that much stock into either of the directions these teams are going, and I'm kind of looking at them as they currently are. And for me, especially with Jordan Love, I know he just got broken off. He is now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL, but he only has 8 good games on his resume total total. He's only played 8 good games in his career. So to me, I need to see more from him to kind of put him in that class where he even deserves his contract. I think that Green Bay, like, yeah, it was exciting last year, but this Philly team is full of a bunch of dogs. They got AJ Brown, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Saquon Barkley is new to town. We got Devontae Smith, and you got Kellen Moore, who's the new offensive coordinator for Philly. Man, I don't see how the Packers stop these guys. I think that even though the Philly defense, especially in the air, struggled last year, I think they're going to make Love earn it. And I'm not really there yet. 3 points isn't that much to give up. If the Eagles win by a field goal, it's a push, no blood. I'll take it. To me, this is kind of like going to be. I don't know if it's a shocker. I think it'll be a shocker. I think after this week, people are going to be talking about the Eagles being one of the absolute top class of teams in the NFC with the Niners. And I think the Packers they're encouraging. I think they might make it to the playoffs this year, but I think they still have a lot of um, a lot of room they have to fill between the gap that the Eagles and the Niners are at and where they are currently. So that's my read on this one. You got anything to add to this, Yanni? I know you're a big Jordan Love guy.
Well, I'm a fan. I'm definitely a fan. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think the Eagles are dealing with a little bit of a beat up secondary. Their rookies didn't grade out too well in the preseason in the secondary. But they're also adding that middle linebacker, I believe Nolan Smith was his name, from that drafted last year that missed most of the year. You're probably going to get a year or two jump out of Jalen Carter on the D line. Obviously, Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio are huge coaching upgrades. So I think you're on the right side of it. Um, I just, to me, it's just weird. They're traveling to Brazil. The players all seem to hate it. It's just weird. And I wonder if the younger guys won't care as much from the Packers. Just because they're not as set in their ways. They're not old and grumpy. They're kind of up for whatever, but also are they more likely to go out when they're there? I don't, I just think it's a weird game. It's a weird game I would stay away from, but I think you're on the right side of it.
Fun fact about this game: neither team is allowed to wear the color green on their
Yeah.
uniforms. There's some sort of Brazilian gang deal with like green. I don't know why that is, but I think that's interesting because they sent the two teams whose primary colors are green to Brazil, where you can't wear
Yeah.
green. Interesting
Yeah.
call, Roger.
Okay. Well, since Ted's done the last two, even though we both are in on this one, I'll hit this game. It's going to be the Steelers at the Falcons, and we're both taking the Falcons -3. I'm parlaying that with the under at 42.5 points for this one. For this game, 24% of the bets are on the Falcons against the spread. 13% of the bets are on the under. However, 59% of the money is on the Falcons against the spread. 48% of the money on the under. So when you see a delta of 13% of the numerical bets on the under, but 48% of the dollars bet, that is a huge. The sharps are all in on the under. I did not know that. I don't check these things before I put my picks in. But it's always reassuring when you look at it and you see that that's the case. And the same thing for both me and Ted hitting the Falcons against the spread here. 60% of the money, man. That's pretty. There's some consensus in the high end betting community on that game. This is our first consensus pick of the year. It's no surprise we're both kind of fading the Steelers this year. We both have a newfound hatred of the Steelers fan base from the Ayuk trade talks. I truly wish the worst for them in a football sense on the field, obviously. Uh, so in general, these are two teams on very different trajectories. If you look at the moves the Falcons made this offseason, adding Judon, adding Simmons, adding Kirk Cousins, adding Michael Penix even, it kind of feels like the Falcons are making the type of moves that you would make if you were expecting to be a wild card team or better this year. And last year, I think if they did not have Arthur Smith, if they had a real quarterback, they were kind of ready to make the jump almost. I was actually betting on them to win the division last year. When you add those kind of guys to the team, Drake London has by far the best quarterbacking situation of his career now. They actually added Darnell Mooney, who's a sneaky, not a big ad or whatever, but a sneaky good free agent ad. I expect their offense to be a lot better. I expect their defense to be a lot better. The Steelers added Russell Wilson. They took away Deontay Johnson on offense. The center that they drafted couldn't stop fumbling the ball on snaps. It feels like they're going in very different directions. And specifically for the under on this game, it feels like these are two teams with really solid defenses. Really solid defenses. You have Russell Wilson coming off being benched for Drew Lock. You have Kirk Cousins coming off of his Achilles tear. Just generally speaking, I think there are a lot of reasons to fade the offenses in this specific matchup in this specific game. 28-14 and you're still hitting the under, I'll take those odds all day.
Yeah, I think that the biggest question for me, because I think I'm locked in with the Steelers' offense being absolutely trash. I know there's some optimism that Russ is going to be an improvement over Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. I don't see that at all.
Yeah.
I think Russ is completely done. My main concern in the thing I'll be watching for in this game is how does Kirk Cousins look coming off a torn Achilles?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not a mobile guy. He's kind of a statue in the pocket. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You don't have to run around to be a quarterback in this league. But I worry if TJ Watt is able to beat whoever the Falcons' right tackle is and kind of get Kirk flustered a little bit, I wonder how he'll look. So, yeah, I mean, I probably lean the under here. I didn't have the stones to do it just because I think that this could be an absolute drubbing. I, I'm I'm a huge fan of the Falcons. I'm a huge fan of what they're doing down there, regardless of their weird draft strategy. I don't know why they drafted Penix, but so be it, right? But they definitely have a bunch of pieces that they put together. It seems like they should be the runaway favorites for the NFC South. That's at least my projection. But yeah, I like it. First FTF consensus of the year. Hopefully, we get a W right out of the gate.
Okay, another one of mine. Texans at the Colts. I'm taking the Texans -2.5 at the away game. The over/under is 49.5, so Vegas is expecting a high-scoring game. Kind of makes sense when you consider the Texans' bad rushing defense and the Colts' bad passing defense. They sort of both fit into each other's strengths here. 56% of the bets are on the Texans against the spread. However, 76% of the money is with them. 76% of the money is overwhelming. Three out of every $4 bet on this game is going to the Texans. So again, sharps, whale bet, whatever you want to call it. The sharps are in on the Texans here. Year two, CJ, we would expect to see a huge jump out of CJ. You actually expect to see a huge jump out of Tank Dell in his year two. Nico Collins just had one of the 10 most efficient seasons ever. They're adding Stephon Diggs. They're adding Joe Mixon. They added a tackle in the draft. They added a corner in the draft. And they're adding John Mechie, who actually looks pretty good in the preseason, as probably going to work in there in the slot a little bit from time to time. The Texans are really on the come up. And my biggest question here, I was a huge Anthony Richardson fan. I talked to Ted so much about him. Ted ended up loading up on him in fantasy last year. It was a good call. But generally speaking, right, can the Colts play from behind? Is this a team that's built to play from behind? We saw the pick six in the preseason. We saw the reports from the Bengals of Anthony Richardson in camp. The Colts went and got themselves a shiny new receiver, right? And AD Mitchell. Pittman's obviously gotten broken off this year. Granson's actually a pretty good receiving tight end. It looked like they're trying to work Jonathan Taylor going out on routes when he was in there. But to me, it looks like an offense that's going to need to rush the ball pretty heavily. That's going to be their main way of attack. What if they get down 7 points? What if they get down 10 or 14 points and you're going into the third quarter? Can they keep grinding the ball? And then what happens if Anthony Richardson needs to open it up? So for me, you're giving the Texans 2.5 on the road, right? I like that. I like that. A field goal to cover that is it's a bet I'm actually very comfortable with this week.
Yeah, I think to your point, the Texans are going to be a trendy pick this year. They're going to be loved by everybody, right? Just because of how many pieces they've added, and everybody's just so excited about C.J. Stroud. Quite frankly, I think a lot of quarterbacks get hyped up and they don't really deserve it, like Jordan Love. I think CJ absolutely deserves it. What he put on tape last year, right out of the gate, is so impressive. So yeah, the reason I was not betting on this game is just because I like what the Colts are doing too. I think Shane Steichen is one of the top offensive minds in the league. Um,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how Anthony Richardson looks. There's been a little bit of talk in this offseason that, like, he's just not as effective throwing the ball. He had a bad performance against the Bengals in the preseason. It kind of got people fading him a little bit. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think he's still a rookie that's going to need to, kind of work out the kinks as he goes, but I think he's a great player. I like this Colts team. I'm bought in, but I just kind of like the whole AFC South in general. I'm fine just sitting back, grabbing my popcorn and watching this one. It should be a great game between two young and up and coming teams.
Yeah, he's special, man. Did you know that he is faster than Lamar Jackson and 30 pounds heavier?
He's faster than Lamar, really?
He's faster than Lamar Jackson and 30 pounds heavier.
That's crazy.
Absolute freak. Yeah. Oh God, another one of mine. Okay. Um, Going dumpster diving here. I do like dumpster diving on some games because I feel like the lines, like Vegas almost throws out, F it lines and just sees if anyone will take them. And that's going to be the Vikings -1.5 at the Giants. So again, another one. This one though, numerically and the money, it's going to be 59% of the bets on the Vikings and 68% of the money. So roughly 2 out of every $3 bet is going to the Vikings in this one. In my opinion, and I've been making these bets in fantasy and I've been making these bets with my bets here, and I know it's a little controversial. I think the fade on the Vikings offense has gone too far. To me, the Vikings looked like a competent offense with Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall throwing the ball last year. If they look competent with that, I actually do believe that Sam Darnold can come in there and what is objectively the best offensive situation he's ever played in. And he's also been in the system for 2 years. This isn't his first year. He was with Shanahan. They run the same offensive scheme as Kevin O'Connell, similar offensive scheme as Kevin O'Connell. But when the one game he got with the Niners last year was not with the starters. This year, he's got JJ, he's got Addison, he's got Hawkinson coming back, he's got Aaron Jones. I think the fade's gone a hair too far on the team. And as long as Aaron Jones is healthy, I do expect them to be able to move the ball on the ground. And really, Ty Chandler's pretty good too. I think they'd be okay if he was not. But Aaron's healthy for this game. We don't expect the Giants defense to have a whole lot for him. It's Danny Dimes' first live bullets back from his ACL. He looked shaky in preseason. We expect Neighbors to be pretty good. We expect Devin Singletary to come in here and there like he always does. And actually, the Giants' D-line is pretty good. So I do understand why some Giants fans may have a bone to pick with this one. But all in all, I'm taking the Vikings. I'm taking the fade on their offense. I do actually think Vegas will adjust to this over the coming weeks and at least take them moderately seriously as an offensive team.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to get.
that's fair. I don't really have too much to add to this one. There are certain games where
Just
I feel like
close.
the both of the teams, in my opinion, are so bad that it adds an element of unpredictability to it. So that's the reason I was out. And I could be selling Sam Darnold short. If Sam Darnold actually can run the offense in at least a competent way, they should beat this Giants team. I'm just not sure if he can do that. Right now, I have at least 2 shares of Justin Jefferson, so I certainly hope that he can. But I'm a little worried about it. We'll see, though. I think after the first week, we'll get a better idea of what this Vikings team is going to be. All right, next one. Panthers at the Saints. And I am rolling with the Carolina Panthers plus 4.5. The over/under on this game is 41.5. 59% of the bets are on the Panthers against the spread, and 39% of the money is on the Panthers against the spread. So we have a 20% difference here between the number of bets placed and the money on the Panthers, which means the sharps are saying this is a sucker bet. But I'm just diving in head first. I know I just kind of talked about how when two teams are so bad, it adds a element of unpredictability to a game. But in my opinion, Dave Canales is the quarterback whisperer. Like if you look at what this guy has done over the past 2 years, he brought Geno Smith back from the dead. He brought Baker Mayfield back from the dead, and now he's coming to a team. He's running the show now, new head coach for the Panthers, and he's getting a number 1 overall pick in just last year's draft. Like I mean, if anybody can do it, if anybody can fix Bryce and this Panthers team and offense in general, I think it's going to be him. I'm all in on this Panthers team. This is my flag plant this year. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I think that they will be at least a competent offense that you're going to be able to find fantasy value and real life value in. The Saints offense is just bad. They're still returning guys like Derek Carr. They haven't really made any new additions whatsoever to the offense. They lost Michael Thomas, who, even though he has the durability of a piece of tissue paper, at least he was effective when he was playing last year. I was actually surprised. Kamara is another year older. It seems like he's lost a step. And Dennis Allen, in general, he's a defensive head coach and just kind of a stooge overall. He was in my top 3 coaches I wanted fired last year. I think this guy is an absolute bum. He has one of the worst records of all time of any head coach, like in terms of winning percentage, which I think is hilarious. I don't know how he's still around, but he is. And yeah, I mean, if you look at it from last year, right? If you're looking at it like these teams are the same as they were last year, I think that it would be a stinky bet and I wouldn't make it. But I'm seeing the Panthers actually make some changes and look like they're going to be a little bit better this year. And the Saints didn't really change anything. I don't know why they didn't at least try to address some issues they had. That their defense is still good. I mean, they got Chase Young, but I don't know. I wouldn't be afraid to just get in on the Panthers here. Get in on them early while the value's there. Plus 4.5 is a great number. You're going through the 3 points. So even if the Saints win by a field goal, I still win the bet. And yeah, that's what I got for this one. Yanni, you got anything to add?
No, I mean I've faded Bryce Young really hard in the pre-draft process. I faded him really hard in his first year last year. Um, my general feeling was that you're already betting on him to be a historical outlier based on his size. But skill wise, I mean, he does look like he threw a real accurate ball last year. He looked great in the first drive that he came out with all his starters this year. Deontay Johnson's objectively an upgrade in their wide receiver core. So is Xavier Legette. So is Jonathan Brooks when he gets back. Um, so I think the Panthers will do a lot better this year than they did last year. I just also think the Saints defense is really good. Um,
Yeah.
I just wouldn't touch it. It's a creepy game for me. It makes me feel weird to look at the game. I don't know, but good for you, man. If you have a strong feeling on it, good for you. Do it.
I think that so much of this, like, even though I am relatively high on the Panthers versus what I think a lot of people are this year, to me, this is more condemning what the Saints are doing. I hate what this Saints team has done.
Yeah.
Like, I just really hate almost everything about them. Like, not like as a franchise or whatever. You guys are fine. You're not Steelers level, but I just think like directionally, I don't know what they're doing. Derek Carr like should have been out of the league 2 years ago. Who knows? Maybe they move on from him and move on to Rattler. And I guess the last little tidbit I'll throw in on this game is if Dave Canales can't fix Bryce Young, nobody can. If Bryce Young looks
Yeah.
as bad this year as he did last year, I am confident just calling Bryce a bust and you just got to move on from him. Dave Canales is a god at fixing quarterbacks, and I've placed hefty fantasy bets on it this year. I have Panthers almost everywhere. I have Chuba Hubbard shares. I have Deontay Johnson shares. I even have some Bryce Young shares. um, so I'm placing a heavy bet on this Panthers team this year. I hope I don't end up with egg on my face, but that's the beauty
Me,
of it. Brand new season. We'll see what happens.
me
Uh,
too, man. I am in there with you.
and then I am continuing to bet on lame 2023 teams this week by going with the Raiders going into SoFi Stadium to play the Chargers. The Raiders are plus 3 point underdogs here, and the over under is 40 and a half. The good news, at least, is 69% of the bets are on the Raiders against the spread, and 71% of the money is on the Raiders against the spread. So when the percentages line up kind of like that, it means there's not really any whale action in one way or the other. It's just a pretty clear consensus, at least from the betting world, that you want to take the Raiders in the points here. Um, Minshew Mania is running wild. A lot of people are kind of viewing Gardner Minshew as a bottom of the barrel quarterback, and I'm not under the illusion that he's some great quarterback. I'm not under the illusion he's like going to be a top 5 or top 10 guy, but I think in terms of what he's been asked to do, right? In Jacksonville, in Philly, in Indianapolis. Like he has had success everywhere he's gone. He hasn't been like a top flight quarterback, but he's been able to at least facilitate the offense in such a way where it's not broken. And I think that's going to be a vast improvement over what the Raiders had last year with your Jimmy G and then eventually Aiden O'Connell. And I actually like Aiden O'Connell. I just think that he probably wasn't ready to be a starter. So I'm not viewing this Raiders team as any worse than they were last year. I'm not viewing them as having a quarterback downgrade. I'm viewing it as actually a quarterback upgrade here. The Raiders had a strong finish to the 2023 season under Antonio Pierce. The team fought to have Antonio Pierce be the head coach. Because he was an interim before, and all the guys in the locker room kind of were like, "Hey, you need to hire this guy as the head coach." So the Raiders did it. The guys are getting behind Antonio Pierce. I don't know how much of an X's and O's guy he is, but not every head coach needs to be that, right? Like look at Dan Campbell. That guy couldn't draw a play on a whiteboard to save his life, but I know that he gets the guys motivated and he has the locker room behind his back. So I take that for something. This is going to be the Jim Harbaugh return game too. Obviously, I'm a Niners fan. I love seeing Jim back in the league. I'm excited for him. I'm excited to have him back in the big leagues here. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, like his roster is just hurt and bad right now. And I don't think that when he signed on to the Chargers job, he realized that it would be this way, or maybe not that he realized it would be this way, but I just don't think that was the perception of this team that they were kind of starting over from scratch. But you had a Liz Frank injury onto Herbert, where I think he's going to be not as effective for at least his first month. Possibly it could be the entire year he struggles like dealing with that. You lose Keenan Allen, you lose Mike Williams, you lose basically everyone on the offensive side of the ball. Eckler too. So now like we have a collection of guys. It's Lad McConkey and Jordan Palmer at wide receiver, which I think the jury's still out on McConkey. I think Jordan Palmer's okay, but like he's not great or anything, right? You have a mishmash of like running backs between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Bus and what's that fella's name? Kamani Vital?
Kamani Vidal.
Kamani Vidal, yeah. Like I just don't really know what this Chargers team is doing. I know they beefed up the offensive line a little bit, but I think it's going to be tough sledding for them, especially at first. And last but not least, I want to talk about the Jimmy G effect. I kind of mentioned it a little bit when I was talking about how I view this quarterback as a quarterback upgrade over a downgrade, but it cannot be stated enough how much Jimmy G will tank your franchise's morale. He will take your hopes and dreams and he will just absolutely crush them. Last year, we saw what happened with Jimmy G in there. He was throwing picks all day. He was doing this thing with his hands right before throwing a pick. Devontae Adams wanted him out after week 6. I mean, I think just getting that guy out of your locker room is an overall benefit to the Raiders. Just not having him even in the building, I think, is going to be a morale boost for them. Jimmy G
Yeah.
sucks. He's your problem now, Rams. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add on to this one?
No, he's a monster. He's a monster. I think they're so much better off without him. Also, it wasn't a Liz Frank. It was a plantar fascia tear for Herbert, but it was a complete plantar fascia tear. Pretty bad. Um, you would expect his mobility to be way down this year. You would expect him to have some problems with his throwing motion a little bit, pushing off. Yeah, that's a tough one, man. That's a really, really tough injury to come back from. And I totally agree. I think you're right. I think the Chargers are much closer to a rebuilding team than they are to a contending team. I think that's a really weird choice of team for Harbaugh to come back to. I don't know why
I think it's because they had Herbert. Like it has to be that, right? Like because in terms of like what the head coach openings were, like Herbert is by far the best available,
I mean,
and
yeah,
it
yeah,
feels like they have the head coach and the quarterback right, which is like 50% of the battle in the NFL. It just feels like this roster is 1 or 2 years away, I think. But I think Jim's going to be able to build it. But this
yeah.
year,
And I mean,
I don't love their chances.
yeah. And conversely, I mean, if you're correct about Minshew playing competently, which I mean, I think he's competent. The Raiders actually have a really good roster around him. Like, I don't think the Raiders get credit enough for kind of the slow build they've been doing, picking up some really nice pieces here and there. So, I probably think you're at the right side of the bet. I just think Harbaugh does this weird thing where he wins most of the time, and it doesn't look like he should win on paper. So those two conflicting things, I just went, I'm out on the game.
Yeah,
But just because it's weird, it's not even like, again, same thing I've said to all your games. It's just odd. It's hard for me to read some of those games, so that's why I avoided this one.
yeah.
Uh,
It's a Niners guy. It feels bad betting against Jim. I love Jim. I think he's gonna. I think he's like a top tier head coach in this league.
oh yeah,
I just see this taking a little bit for them. But that's the beauty of it. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe they come out and beat the Raiders week one. I'm betting placing strong bets this week on getting value on stinky teams from last year
yeah.
with the Raiders and the Panthers that I think have improved. But we'll see. You
And I
never
mean,
really know.
the sharps and the general public agree with you, 70%, 70%. So.
Wow.
Okay, my last one in my series of bets is going to be the Cowboys getting 2.5 on the road at the Browns. This one's a little bit closer. It's kind of hard to say there's some definitive thing. You got 39% numerically on the Cowboys against the spread, 49% of the dollars on the Cowboys against the spread. So you would say that that's the sharps being on it, but that's pretty close. I mean, 49, 51% dollars wise. In my opinion, this line did not move enough with the news that CD's coming back. Are you going to get 100% prime CD? Probably not. But him and Dak were the best combination of quarterback and wide receiver in the NFL for like the last, month and a half, 2 months of the season last year. I think they are a legitimate powerhouse of a team or powerhouse of a duo in terms of the two of them playing. I think Jalen Tolbert's a pretty good player. I think we'd expect a year or two jump out of Ferguson. And their running back room's a little murky, but Tony Pollard was not healthy until week 8, 9, 10 last year. I actually do think they'll have competent rushing game here. And so to me, this is really a bet on a few things. I do think, is Tug cooked? We call Deshaun Watson Tug here. Is Tug cooked? Right. Is he cooked? It did not look like he's a good football player anymore. Fantasy, I know some people said he was a top 10 quarterback in the weeks he played. Maybe in fantasy because he rushes just enough. He did not look good. It looked like the Browns were a significantly better team with Joe Flacco in there last year. And so he's going against a top 10 defense. The Cowboys do have a legitimate defense, man. Mike McCarthy's a more than competent head coach. You can say whatever you want about him. He's goofy looking or whatever. He slept over at Jerry Jones's house to get the job. I think that's amazing. But he's a more than competent head coach. I guess there could be some mild concern about losing his defensive coordinator this year, maybe, but I think he's shown over the years he knows how to staff. So you have a very good defense from last year going against a quarterback who looks like he's cooked on an offense without their best player. Nick Chubb is their best player. He's not out there. He's not going to be out there for 6 to 8 weeks, maybe more. Ted put that last line in there as this bait. I don't understand how 2.5, man. That is a nice, comfy number to give the Cowboys against the Browns. I think they're both elite defenses with one having a way better offense. I'll take that all day. I'll take it all day. I don't think the home field advantage is worth a field goal for the Browns.
Yeah, in my opinion, this should probably be a Browns 2.5
Yeah,
point
plus,
underdog line. Like it makes no sense to me, and the
yeah,
fact that it is this far off what I think it is kept me off the game. Last year, I think the Browns were 3-point favorites against the Bengals. I thought, oh my gosh, this is free money, and I called it my lock of the week one. I ended up with egg on my face. The Browns just absolutely dog walked the Bengals. So I mean, I understand the play. I guess I kind of see what Vegas is doing here. This Browns team, they have guys all across the board. They have an elite
yeah.
defense. They have Amari Cooper. They have a good line. I mean, I get it. I just think that Tug is completely cooked personally. I Until he shows me that he can be a competent quarterback, I'm going to assume he's not going to be. And like you have this Dak and CD connection, it just really something's fishy here to me. So that's why I stayed away from it. But I think you're absolutely on the right side, and we'll I guess we'll see, right? That's the beauty of it. Like we'll see
Dude,
what happens.
the Njoku and Amari had way better stats with Flacco than they did with Deshaun. Way
Hmm.
better stats. Ford was one of the most effective receiving backs in football after Nick Chubb got hurt. But because Deshaun is so incompetent right now as a passer, or at least he was last year, maybe something totally changed. He was running a lot, which means he's not dumping off to Ford a lot, right? So if Ford and Joku and Cooper, the core of their team's production, all came off of as a result of Joe Flacco and Joe Flacco's playing style, and they're missing their best offensive player in Nick Chubb. Oh God, man, I think Browns are in for a tough year. I think they're going to win ugly defensive games, but against decent scoring offenses, even decent, not insane scoring offenses, and the Cowboys are a pretty damn good offense.
Like so to me, this game, right? If you told me like a score that you think is reasonable, like if you told me the Cowboys beat the Browns by like 28 points, I would probably believe it more than the Browns beating the Cowboys by 10 points to me. Like I think that if the Browns win this game, it is going to be like a tight defensive struggle and the Cowboys look a little rusty. And I think there's a chance that the Cowboys just come out and look amazing and the Browns look out of their league at the quarterback position. But we'll see. That's going to do it for us for all of our games for week one. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. And if you actually are in not a nanny state like California and can make bets, let us know how you did. Let us know if we won you some money. Let us know if we're big dumb stooges and told you the wrong bet to make. Whatever you want to do in the comments. But yeah, we'll catch you next week for the first free agent episode of the year.
Yep. Thanks, guys.